O Night Divine, A Good Omens Christmas Story by Godfrey. Aziraphale, it's okay, Crowley said, putting an arm around the angel's shoulder. You can go to midnight mass, I'll be fine here. Pish-posh, Crowley, Aziraphale replied in that no-nonsense way. Nobody should be alone on Christmas, and don't even think about coming with me, he added sternly, noticing the look on the demon's face. I don't want to see you in pain. Go, Aziraphale, I told you I'll be all right. Crowley waved him off. I'll just watch Die Hard or something. Aziraphale sighed. Before he and Crowley had become as close as they were, Aziraphale went to midnight mass every Christmas Eve. It wasn't for heavenly reasons, he just loved the atmosphere of it. He loved the songs, the decorations, the food. Christmas was, without a doubt, his favourite holiday. However, he hadn't been in over 11 years, since the Godfather Agreement. Obviously, Crowley tended to lean away from the religious side of things, but he also found the singing and the tacky sweaters and the decor to be more than a little over the top. The only thing he actually liked about Christmas was the show of crass commercialism that he'd gotten a special commendation for, and once again it had been entirely humanity's own doing. So the pair chose to spend the holidays in their own way, reading the classics or watching some cheesy festive rom-com together. Very well, my dear, Aziraphale muttered. I'll go. It'll be lovely, but I'll miss you. Relax, Crowley giggled, ruffling Aziraphale's soft blonde hair. You'll be away for a few hours. I'll see you when you get back. All right, then, Aziraphale smiled back. See you in a while, my love. He gave Crowley a brief kiss on the cheek before swishing out the bookshop door. Said Crowley, blushing redder than the fires of hell itself. He'd had every intention of going home and watching Die Hard again. He'd also contemplated yelling at his plants for a while and getting absolutely wasted. But he wasn't going to do that. He got into his Bentley and sped off to the church, his Queen tape blaring as he went. You may go in peace, the priest finished his sermon. Merry Christmas to you all, and may the Lord be with you. Everyone else in the church got up to leave, but Aziraphale remained seated. Understandable, of course. He'd always found a special appreciation for the design of churches, and he hadn't been here in over a decade. Hardly a blip in his 6,000-year life, but still it had been a while. He found himself fondly remembering that time in 1941 when Crowley had saved him from the Germans. That had been the first, last and only time Anthony J. Crowley would ever so much as set foot in a church. Aziraphale was just heading to the door, and he was about to go back and see how Crowley was doing when he heard a man singing. Oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Saviour's birth. Aziraphale paused. He knew the tune, but the voice was soft and wavery, like the person singing was about to start crying. Crowley approached the microphone. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared, and the soul felt its worth. The angel turned around, and when he saw who was singing, he gasped deeply. Crowley was standing at the altar, trying his hardest not to let Aziraphale see how much pain he was in. He felt like he was walking on hot coals, but he sang anyway. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks, a new and glorious morn. Crowley! Aziraphale ran to the altar, with only one thought in his mind. I have to save Crowley. Crowley, please! Aziraphale had hit an invisible wall, separating him and Crowley by at least 10 feet. Crowley was clearly hell-bent on seeing this through. Fall on your knees. Crowley took a step, one step towards Aziraphale, but he stumbled and dropped to his knees. He couldn't stay standing, but now he felt the burn of consecrated ground more strongly. It took all of his will not to scream, but he couldn't let himself cry out. He had a song to finish, but each sacred word seemed to tear his throat. Not to mention, this song wasn't exactly in his vocal range. Oh, hear the angel voices. Crowley, please, it's not worth it. Aziraphale screamed at the top of his voice, tears in those brilliant blue eyes, as he looked up at Crowley, begging him to come down, to stop putting himself through this. Crowley tried to block it out and keep going. He closed his eyes tightly behind his sunglasses and pushed himself even further, singing his heart out for Aziraphale. Oh, night divine, oh, night when Christ was born. Crowley bowed his head, almost as if in prayer. Ironic, really. His sunglasses fell off, but he was so focused on his performance that he didn't even notice, let alone care. Oh, night divine. Crowley, dramatic as he was, went for the high note, and his voice cracked in the middle of it. He looked up at Aziraphale, and the angel gave him a look of utter desperation. Oh, night, oh, night divine. His voice shook and trailed off on the last line. The force field keeping Aziraphale away from him flickered out of existence as Crowley collapsed into an awkward heap. Crowley! Aziraphale screamed like no angel had screamed before, and ran like no angel ever had before as well. He knelt at Crowley's side, noting the demon's sallow cheeks and slow, ragged breathing. Oh, fuck! Time itself seemed to grind to a shuddering, screeching halt. Aziraphale blushed, secretly glad Crowley wasn't conscious for that little slip of the tongue. That didn't stop him hoisting his lanky companion over his shoulders and carrying him fireman-style to the Bentley. Oh, come on, why won't this blasted contraption turn on? Aziraphale frantically tried to learn how to use Crowley's smartphone. He eventually found the on button and called Anathema. Hello? Anathema, it's Aziraphale and I need help, the frazzled angel began. Crowley did something very stupid. Let me guess, he went with you to midnight mass and now you think he's dying. How on earth do you? Agnes Nutter Prophecy number 5601. The voice of the serpent rings loud where fallen angels fear to tread, and the voice of the innocent is tainted with a word most foul. Anathema read. What? I didn't burn all of them. I kept the ones that would help the people I care about. Now, what do I need to do? I'm not exactly a demon specialist. I want you to come to Crowley's flat and just... Aziraphale trailed off. I need moral support, all right? Okay, I'm on my way, Anathema said, hanging up. Aziraphale bundled Crowley into the back of the car, got into the driver's seat and sped off. It was a peculiar thing when one stopped to think about it. Aziraphale was an angel. He wasn't supposed to break the rules. He himself had scolded Crowley for driving at 90 miles an hour down Oxford Street, and here he was, easily doing 100. Aziraphale finally found his way to Crowley's flat and carried him to the elevator and then to his couch. Anathema came in not 2 minutes later. I came as soon as I could, she gasped, out of breath from having run all the way from the bus stop to the flat. How is he? He's resting at the moment, Aziraphale told her. Oh, I hope he's going to be all right. Hey, Aziraphale, it's going to be okay. Anathema put a patient hand on the angel's shoulder. He'll live. Just give it a while, he'll come round. Very well, but I want you to stay with me, Aziraphale said shakily. I'm scared, Anathema, and I don't think I can face this alone. Okay, I will, Anathema agreed. But get some sleep, Aziraphale. I'll let you know if anything happens. Thank you, Aziraphale said, trying to muster a tiny smile. He went into what he assumed was Crowley's bedroom, passing by his plants, which immediately began shaking. Oh, you poor dears. Aziraphale could sense how terrified the plants were. Whatever has he done with you? Well, I wanted to know that you're all doing a wonderful job at growing. Don't mind Crowley, he has some personal issues around his fall, you understand. Aziraphale, of course, knew the plants wouldn't understand the complexities of heaven and hell, but his words of comfort made them less anxious, and that was something.
His duty as a principality was to love all creatures on God's green earth, and Crowley's clearly traumatised houseplants were no exception.
The angel struggled to fall asleep. Well, strictly speaking, angels didn't need to. Nor did demons, as a matter of fact. Crowley just adopted the habit because it seemed a very human thing to do. And Crowley's room was cold and minimalist, and it felt far too much like the offices of heaven. But Aziraphale knew that hell was probably more cluttered, and Crowley needed an escape from that. So he sat there on Crowley's bed and waited. And waited. The hours blurred into each other until finally, Anathema knocked on the door. "He's awake," she smiled broadly, "and he wants to see you." Aziraphale leapt from the bed and ran to the living room. Crowley was halfway between sitting and still lying down on his couch. "Angel," came the demon's voice, slurred and uneven due to him having just woken up. "Oh, Crowley, thank someone you're all right," Aziraphale cried, wrapping his arms around Crowley's slim frame. "Don't you ever scare me like that again, Anthony J. Crowley, do you hear me? I'm sorry." Crowley looked like he was on the verge of crying. "No, Crowley, it wasn't your fault. I'll never be good enough for you." Aziraphale stopped dead in his tracks. "What?" he asked after about 30 seconds of tense silence. I'm a demon," Crowley wept. "By my very nature, I'm not good enough for anyone, especially not an angel. I can't even support you in going to midnight mass. What kind of partner am I?" "Crowley, you support me by being you," Aziraphale reassured him, his own eyes now brimming with tears as well. "I didn't love you because you used to be an angel. I don't love you just because you're a demon either. I love you for you." "Really?" Crowley sniffled. "Of course." Aziraphale ran a hand through Crowley's fiery hair. "That's what I've always loved about you, and I can't fathom why you don't see that in yourself." "I don't know why either," Crowley said. "Maybe crippling self-doubt was part of her punishment for me." "Well, try not to doubt yourself so much," Aziraphale told him. "You're brave and witty and charming enough to tempt an angel. Think about that. Now, how about we watch that movie you like, the one you insist is somehow a Christmas movie?" "Die Hard is a Christmas movie. It's a classic," Crowley chimed in. "Well, I've never thought so myself, but I'm willing to make an exception." Aziraphale smiled in his heavenly way. "I'd quite like to see what all the fuss is about, and I've heard wonderful things about this Bruce Willis fellow." Crowley giggled a bit. He loved the way Aziraphale talked. It was music to his ears. And if that was the closest he'd ever get to the sacred hymns of heaven, then that was fine with him.